Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to True Stories. Today I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story, Asterisk. Harper Lane always believed that silence could carry more power than shouting that night. Silence filled the penthouse like heavy fog. The apartment overlooked downtown Chicago, glowing with glass towers and endless streams of headlights far below. The marble floors were spotless. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and polished wood. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt hollow. Dylan Brooks stood near the wide kitchen island, dressed in a tailored navy suit, even though it was past 9 in the evening. His phone rested in his hand like it was more important than the woman standing 10 feet away from him. Harper leaned lightly against the dining table. She had just finished cleaning up the dishes from a dinner he barely touched. He did not look at her when he began speaking. He said investors were coming next week from California. He said image mattered now more than ever. He said the company was no longer a small dream built in a garage. It was becoming something global. Then he finally looked at her and he said she did not fit the image. Anymore the words were simple, calm, almost polite. That was what made them hurt. Harper felt something inside. Her chest tightened, but her face did not change. She had learned long ago that reacting only gave people satisfaction. 7 years. 7 years of believing in him before anyone else did. 7 years of sitting beside him while he typed code he barely understood, while she quietly rewrote entire sections after he fell asleep on the couch. 7 years of waitressing double shifts at a small diner on West Adams Street so he could pay for servers and marketing tools. She remembered the first apartment. They shared tiny cracked walls. Broken heater. They used to eat instant noodles at midnight and talk about the future back then. He used to hold her hand and say they were building something together. Now he stood there saying she'd no longer fit. Grant Holloway sat on the sofa scrolling through social media, pretending not to listen. He gave a short laugh and muttered that success required upgrades. Harper looked at Grant once. Not angry. Not offended. Simply measuring him. Dylan continued speaking. He said it would be better if she moved out before the investor gala. He said it would avoid confusion. He said he would transfer some money to help her find a place. Like charity, Harper finally spoke. Her voice was steady. She told him that was not necessary. That response made him pause. He expected tears. Or pleading. Maybe a dramatic argument. Instead, she turned and walked toward the bedroom. The sound of the closet doors, sliding open, echoed down the hallway. Dylan followed slowly. Unsure why her calmness unsettled him more than anger would have, she pulled 2 suitcases from the back shelf. The wheels clicked softly as they touched the floor. She folded her clothes neatly. She packed only what belonged to her. She left behind the designer bags he bought after the company secured funding. She left behind jewelry he gave her during interviews to make her look polished each. Movement was careful, controlled. Dylan leaned against the doorway. He asked where she would go. She said she had options. He frowned. He did not know she had options. While he was busy attending networking events and posing for magazine features, Harper had been working quietly at night. Not for him. For herself. She reached under the dresser and removed a small black external hard drive. It fit into her palm easily. She slipped it into her purse without explanation. Dylan noticed. He asked what that was. She said it was something she created long ago. He did not press further. He assumed it was personal photos or old projects that did not matter. He made the mistake of assuming many things about her. When her suitcases were packed, she zipped them closed. The sound felt final. She walked past him. For a second, their shoulders almost touched. He smelled her familiar scent and felt a flicker of something close to doubt. But pride is louder than doubt. Grant stood up. Grant stood up once in a month. He said women always came back when they realized how expensive the world was. Harper paused at the door. She turned her head slightly and looked at Dylan. Directly, her eyes were not sad. They were clear. That expression stayed with him long after she left. The door closed. Gently behind her, no drama. No shouting. No tears, just silence. Outside, the night air felt cold against her skin. She stood still for a moment, letting the city noise surround her. She did not cry. She felt something else. Relief. She opened her phone and typed a short message. I am read. Your response came within seconds. The car is waiting at the private terminal. Harper rolled her suitcases toward the elevator as she descended to the lobby. She thought about the first time she met Sebastian Cole. It happened quietly, almost by accident. 3 months earlier, she had submitted a cybersecurity proposal anonymously to a private investment firm. She used a neutral email address and a technical alias. She never expected a response, but she received one. Sebastian Cole was known in financial circles as a billionaire who specialized in acquiring undervalued innovation. He rarely gave interviews. He did not attend flashy parties. He invested in intelligence, not noise. He had traced her proposal back to her real identity within 2 weeks, instead of exposing her. He invited her to a discreet meeting. They met in a quiet hotel lounge in Chicago. He listened more than he spoke. He asked precise questions about system architecture and long-term scalability. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Dylan always brushed off her suggestions. He said she overthought things. Sebastian studied, like she was a hidden asset. He had already suspected that the core engine behind Dylan's company was not entirely his creation. Patterns in the code suggested a different mind at work, a cleaner structure. Deeper logic. Harper never openly admitted everything during that first meeting. But Sebastian saw enough. He told her something that changed her life. He said brilliance should never hide in the shadow of ego back in the present. The car pulled up outside the building. Sleek, black, quiet. The driver stepped out and loaded her luggage without asking questions as they drove toward the private airport. Harper stared out at the city lights. Memories passed through her mind like old film reels. Late nights debugging. Code. Dylan celebrating funding rounds while she stayed home. Fixing server crashes. Grant joking in interviews that Dylan was a lone genius. She never corrected them. Not because she was weak, but because she believed loyalty mattered. Loyalty without respect becomes self-betrayal. The car reached the private terminal. A matte black jet waited on the runway. Engines humming softly. Harper stepped out and inhaled deeply. This was the point of no return. Inside the jet, Sebastian stood as she entered. He wore a simple charcoal suit. No flashy watch. No exaggerated confidence, just presence. You made the decision, he said calmly. Yes, she replied. Are you certain? She nodded. Once we move forward, he continued, there will be consequences for him. An attention for you? She held his gaze. I am done hiding. She said. The jet lifted into the night sky. Harper watched Chicago grow smaller beneath them, for the first time in years. She felt like she was moving toward something instead of holding someone else up. 4 hours later, they landed in New York. Sebastian had arranged dinner at an exclusive rooftop restaurant overlooking Manhattan. Word had quietly spread that he was meeting a potential strategic partner. Media outlets monitored his movements carefully. As the car pulled up outside the restaurant, cameras already waited. Harper stepped out beside him wearing an elegant black dress that flowed smoothly around her figure. Minimal jewelry. Natural makeup. Confidence. Flashes exploded around them. Voices shouted. Questions. Who is Shays? This a new acquisitionist? She, the architect behind the rumored cybersecurity platform Harper, did not answer. She simply stood beside Sebastian. Inside, the restaurant glowed with warm light and crystal glasses. The city skyline stretched endlessly beyond the windows. They sat near the edge overlooking the river. Sebastian poured wine into her glass. To timing, he said quietly. She lifted her glass to truth. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Dylan woke up to relentless vibrations from his phone. He groaned and reached for it. Hundreds of notifications. Grant called immediately. His voice panicked. Have you seen the headlines? Dylan opened. Social media. There she was, Harper Lane, sitting beside Sebastian Cole, smiling softly. Headlines described her as a mysterious strategist. Speculation spread that she might be the real mind behind upcoming technology that could disrupt the market. Dylan felt heat rush to his face. He zoomed into the photo. She looked different. Not because of clothes. Because of posture, confidence radiated from her. Investors began messaging him, asking if he had lost a key team member. Industry forums questioned the origin of certain code patterns. Old contributors hinted anonymously that Harper had more influence than publicly acknowledged. Grant called again. Talking about damage control. Dylan barely heard him. He remembered her calm expression at the door. He remembered the small black hard drive she took. Quiet fear crept into his chest. What exactly had she built back in New York? Dessert arrived. Harper felt her phone vibrate. She did not check it immediately. Sebastian watched her thoughtfully. By morning, he said, the narrative will begin to shift. She inhaled slowly. For years, she accepted being invisible. Tonight, the world was beginning to look at her differently. Not as someone left behind, but someone stepping forward. She looked out at the city lights one more time. This was only the beginning. And somewhere far away, Dylan finally understood that the quiet woman he dismissed might have been the foundation of everything he built. Morning in Chicago did not feel the same. Dylan Brooks stood in front of the massive glass window of his penthouse, staring down at the city that once made him feel powerful. Now it felt like it was watching him, judging him. His phone had not stopped vibrating since sunrise. Investors, board members, tech bloggers, even former employees he had not spoken to in years were suddenly asking questions. Grant Holloway paced across the living room with restless energy. He kept refreshing financial news sites as if staring harder would make the headlines disappear. This is temporary, Grant insisted. People love drama. By next week, it will fade. Dylan did not answer. He was reading a thread on a popular tech forum. Someone had posted a detailed breakdown of his company's original system architecture. The anonymous user pointed out stylistic differences in early versions of the code. Subtle changes in structure, improved encryption methods that appeared suddenly. 2 years after launch, the post ended with one sentence. The real architect was never credited. Dylan felt his throat tighten. He remembered those nights clearly. He would sit, frustrated, unable to solve scaling issues. Harper would quietly take the laptop and tell him to sleep. By morning, the problems would be gone. He told himself she was just helping, assisting, polishing. His ideas, he never allowed himself to think deeper. Now the internet was thinking for him. Grant stopped pacing and stared at his phone. Sebastian Cole just confirmed he is speaking at the Global Innovation Summit in San Francisco tomorrow. And guess who is listed as special guest? Dylan did not need to ask. Harper, back in New York. Harper stood in front of a mirror inside a high-rise hotel suite. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, painting soft lines across the room. She was not wearing the elegant dress from the night before. She wore simple, tailored pants and a cream blouse. Comfortable. Focused. Sebastian sat at the dining table, reviewing documents on a tablet. The summit audience will include venture capital firms, cybersecurity analysts, and several government representatives, he said calmly. They believe I am unveiling a new defensive infrastructure platform. Harper nodded. Are you nervous? He asked. A little, she admitted. He stood and walked toward her. Good nervousness means you care about accuracy. Arrogance means you do not. She gave a faint smile. The summit in San Francisco was known for shaping industry direction. Founders secured billion-dollar funding after speaking on that stage. Companies collapsed when credibility shattered there. Harper knew this appearance was not about revenge. It was about ownership. As the private jet landed in California later that afternoon, media attention had doubled. News outlets now framed her as the mysterious woman behind a possible technology shift at the conference venue. He had purchased a last-minute ticket through one of his contacts. He convinced himself he needed to control the narrative before it spiraled further. Inside the main auditorium, hundreds of executives and developers filled the seats. Screens projected a sleek introduction video for Sterling Ventures. Dylan took a seat near the middle row. He adjusted his suit nervously. Whispers moved through the crowd as people recognized him. Some stared with curiosity, others with skepticism. Then the lights dimmed. Sebastian walked onto the stage first. Applause followed. Calm, controlled. He spoke about data vulnerability, about the increasing theft of intellectual property, about the need for transparent authorship, verification in digital systems. Dylan shifted in his chair. Then Sebastian paused. For years, he continued, the industry has celebrated faces instead of foundations. It is time to correct that imbalance. He turned slightly toward the side of the stage. Please welcome the chief architect of our new cybersecurity platform, Harper Lane. The spotlight shifted. Harper stepped forward. The auditorium grew quiet. She did not rush. She did not smile dramatically. She simply walked to the center and stood tall. Dylan felt heat crawl up his neck. Harper began speaking in steady, clear tones. She explained how intellectual property theft often begins with subtle credit manipulation, how teams sometimes hide true contributors behind charismatic leaders, how systems can embed digital signatures that trace authorship. Beyond public claims, each sentence felt precise, deliberate, on the large screen behind her. She displayed segments of anonymized code comparisons, structural patterns, timing metadata, version histories. Then she paused. 2 years ago, she said calmly, I designed a root layer encryption model that was implemented inside a rapidly growing logistics platform. That model reduced breach attempts by 40%. However, my name was never attached to its release, the audience murmured. Spalms began to sweat. She was not accusing directly. She was demonstrating capability. She continued outlining her new platform, a system that could verify authorship trails and protect innovators from being erased. When she finished, applause filled the room. Stronger than before, Sebastian returned to the stage and announced that Sterling Ventures would fund the platform with immediate global rollout plans. Questions from the audience followed. 1. Analyst asked Harper how she handled being underestimated. She answered calmly, being underestimated gave me time to build without pressure. Another asked whether her experience influenced the platform design. She paused. Briefly, experience teaches you to protect what you create. In the middle row, Dylan could no longer sit still. He stood up. Harper, he called out. The room shifted. Cameras turned toward him instantly. Sebastian remained composed. Harper looked at Dylan without visible emotion. This is not the place, Dylan said, forcing a smile. If you have concerns about authorship or credit, we can discuss privately. There is no need to imply anything publicly. Harper tilted her head slightly. I implied nothing, she replied. I described functionality. Some audience members chuckled softly. Dylan pressed forward. You were part of a team. Everyone contributed. You are making it sound like you were hidden deliberately. Harper met his gaze steadily. Was credited in official filings for the root encryption model. She asked evenly. Dylan hesitated. The silence stretched longer than he expected. No. He admitted quietly, because I was not on payroll at that time. He added quickly. Harper nodded. Yet the model was accepted and implemented, she continued. Yes, he replied. Sebastian stepped forward. Intellectual property does not depend on payroll status, he said calmly. It depends on authorship. A journalist near the front raised her hand. Are you confirming that, Ms. Lane? Created core components of Brooks Logistics Systems. Harper answered before Dylan could. I am confirming that I created specific foundational components which were deployed successfully. Gasps moved through the hall. Dylan felt his control slipping. After the session ended, media surrounded Harper and Sebastian. Dylan was left standing alone near the aisle. Grant called him repeatedly. Investors demanded explanation. Within hours, financial analysts began reviewing Brooks Logistics filings. Questions about early development credit surfaced publicly. Share prices dipped slightly by closing bell. Not catastrophic yet, but unstable. That evening, a private reception followed the summit. Harper stood near a balcony overlooking the San Francisco skyline. Sebastian joined her quietly. "You handled that well?" he said. She exhaled slowly. It felt strange speaking aloud. "What I kept silent for years?" He studied her. Profile against the city lights. "You regret stepping into this." She shook her head. "I regret staying invisible for so long inside the ballroom." Dylan watched from across the room, anger mixed with something deeper. Realization. He walked toward her again. "Harper," he said more quietly this time. "Can we speak privately?" Sebastian glanced at her, silently asking permission. She nodded once. They stepped into a side corridor. Dad's voice dropped. "You are letting him use you to attack me." Harper looked at him calmly. "No one is using me. You are angry." He insisted. "This is revenge." She took a slow breath. "If it were revenge," she said softly, "I would have exposed everything months ago. This is correction." He ran a hand through his hair. "You are going to destroy the company. Hundreds of employees depend on it." Harper's eyes sharpened slightly. Then, "You should have protected its integrity from the beginning." He stepped closer. "I built that company," he said. She held his gaze. "You marketed it." The words landed heavier than shouting, for the first time. Dylan saw not the supportive partner he once dismissed, but a strategist. Someone who understood systems deeper than he ever had. Footsteps approached. Reporters searching for statements. Harper turned to leave. "This is not personal destruction," she said quietly, before walking away. "It is structural truth." Back inside the reception, Sebastian announced that their new cybersecurity company would officially launch under the name Lucid Shield Technologies, with Harper as co-founder and chief systems architect. Applause filled the room once more. By midnight, headlines across financial media reported the partnership. Analysts speculated whether Brooks Logistics could survive the credibility challenge. In Chicago the next morning, the company's board scheduled an emergency meeting. Share prices had dropped 8% overnight. Employees whispered in hallways. Developers revisited old commits in the repository. Some began quietly sending resumes elsewhere. Dylan sat at the head of the conference table, trying to maintain composure. Board members asked direct questions. Did Harper contribute to foundational code? Yes, he admitted reluctantly. Why? Was she never credited formally? He struggled to answer without admitting negligence. By the end of the meeting, the board demanded a full internal audit. Meanwhile, in California, Harper reviewed beta tests for Lucid Shield. The system performed flawlessly. Sebastian entered her office. "We expected resistance," he said. "It has begun." She nodded. "Are you ready for what comes next?" he asked. "Legal review. Possible court involvement. Public scrutiny." She closed her laptop slowly. "I have already faced the hardest part," she replied. Believing my work mattered. Outside her window, the city shimmered with movement. Power was shifting, not loudly, not violently, but steadily. And somewhere in a high-rise office in Chicago, Dylan began to understand that losing Harper was not simply a breakup. It was the collapse of a foundation he never realized he was standing on. 3 weeks later, the situation was no longer gossip. It was legal. Financial news channels no longer used phrases like rumored architect or mysterious partner. They now used words like ownership dispute, intellectual property claim, and executive misconduct. Harper Lane had officially filed for recognition as co-author of the foundational encryption and logistics engine that powered Brooks Logistics. Dylan. Brooks had officially denied intentional misconduct. The courtroom in downtown Chicago was packed the morning the hearings began. Reporters filled the back rows. Inductor whispered predictions. Former employees watched with tense expressions. Harper sat calmly at the plaintiff's table wearing a simple white suit. No dramatic jewelry. No exaggerated expression, just focus. Sebastian Cole sat one seat behind her. He was not there to dominate the room. He was there to support. Across the aisle, Dylan looked thinner. The confident glow he once carried had faded into something strained. Grant Holloway was not present. He had quietly resigned from the company days earlier. The judge called the session to order. Dylan's legal team opened with a controlled narrative. They described Harper as a supportive partner who occasionally assisted with brainstorming but was never officially employed. They argued that informal help did not equal ownership. Harper listened without reacting. When it was her attorney's turn, the tone shifted. The argument was not emotional. It was technical. Version histories were displayed on large monitors. Timestamps from early development stages appeared on screen. Code commits tied to a private local machine identifier were shown. The identifier matched a laptop purchased under Harper's name 7 years earlier. Murmurs moved through the courtroom. Then came the encrypted archive. Harper had not only stored her early drafts on the external drive she took the night she left, she had also embedded an invisible authorship watermark inside the core encryption layer. When decrypted in court, under expert supervision, the watermark revealed a signature string containing her name, the original design date, and a hash linked to her personal academic research submissions. From years prior, it was not something created overnight. It was foresight. Dylan's attorney attempted to argue coincidence, but the independent cybersecurity expert appointed by the court shook his head. This level of embedded authorship tracing is intentional and highly specific, he stated clearly. It is consistent with primary design authority. Dylan's jaw tightened. When he was called to testify, the room grew still. He maintained that the company was his vision, his networking, his risk. Under cross-examination, Harper's attorney asked a simple question. What programming language was the original scalable encryption layer written in? Dylan hesitated. He answered incorrectly. The courtroom fell into a low wave of whispers. Harper did not smile. She simply closed her eyes briefly as if confirming something internally. After hours of testimony, the judge announced a temporary ruling pending final review. However, early findings strongly favored shared intellectual property recognition outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed again. Harper stood at the top of the steps while reporters shouted, "Questions? Are you trying to bankrupt Brooks? Logistics? Is this personal revenge? Are you and Sebastian Cole romantically involved?" She raised her hand, gently to signal quiet. "This is not about revenge," she said clearly. "It is about accurate authorship and fair acknowledgement. Innovation requires integrity." Sebastian remained beside her, but did not speak. The next week, the final ruling arrived. Harper Lane was recognized as co-creator of the foundational encryption engine. She was granted financial compensation and a percentage of past profits tied to that specific intellectual property. Brooks Logistics stock dropped another 15% following the decision. Investors began demanding leadership restructuring. 2 days later, Dylan resigned as chief executive officer. He released a public statement thanking early supporters and acknowledging that collaborative contributions were not properly documented during the company's early growth. It was carefully worded, but the message was clear. Harper watched the news from her new office in San Francisco. Lucid Shield technologies had grown rapidly in just a few weeks. Several banks and logistics firms signed pilot contracts for the authorship verification. Platform. Engineers moved confidently through open workspace areas. Her team respected her not because she demanded it, but because she understood the architecture deeper than anyone else in the room. One evening, after most employees had left, she stood by the window overlooking the bay. The city lights reflected against the water in soft ripples. Sebastian entered quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. "Long day," he said gently. She nodded. "It feels strange," she admitted. "I thought I would feel triumphant. And do you?" She considered the question carefully. "I feel balanced," she replied. like something that was leaning too far to one side has finally straightened. He handed her the tea. Balance is more sustainable than revenge, he said. For a moment, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, simply reflective. Sebastian studied her profile in the soft light. When I first met you, he said quietly, I saw someone who believed her brilliance was secondary. Harper gave a faint smile. Believed loyalty meant shrinking, and now, I know loyalty does not require disappearance. He stepped a little closer, careful not to cross any boundary she had not invited. There is something else, he said. She turned toward him. When we started this partnership, my focus was strategic. Your mind impressed me. Your discipline impressed me. But over these months, I've come to respect something deeper. Her heartbeat shifted slightly. Your resilience, he continued. The way you carry strength without noise? She looked at him steadily. Are you saying this is my investor? She asked softly. No, he replied. I am saying this as a man who admires you. There was no dramatic music, no rushed confession. Just honesty. Harper felt warmth spread slowly, carefully. She had learned not to mistake intensity for trust. I am not ready to rush into anything, she said truthfully. Sebastian nodded immediately. Neither am I. That answer meant more to her than grand promises. Months passed. Lucid Shield expanded into international markets. Their authorship verification platform became a standard requirement for several large tech firms. Universities invited Harper to speak about ethical innovation and proper credit structures. She accepted selectively. She spoke calmly. She told young developers that skill without recognition creates imbalance. Imbalance eventually collapses systems. Dylan moved quietly out of public view. Reports indicated he was consulting for smaller startups. Not leading. Not celebrated. Just rebuilding privately. One afternoon, almost a year after she left the penthouse, Harper received an unexpected message. It was from Dylan. He asked for a brief meeting after consideration. She agreed to meet in a neutral cafe in Chicago during one of her business trips. When she walked in, she saw a different man than the one who dismissed her. Less polished. More grounded, he stood as she approached. Thank you for coming, he said. She sat across from him calmly. I wanted to say something without cameras, he continued. She waited. I underestimated you. Not just your skill. Your strength? She studied him carefully. Acknowledgement matters, she said quietly. I know, he replied. And I did not understand that before. There was no anger left in her. Only clarity. I hope you build differently next time, she said. He nodded once. They finished their coffee without tension. As she walked back onto the Chicago sidewalk, she felt no regret, no bitterness. Just distance from a chapter that had taught her who she truly was. Later that evening, she returned to San Francisco. Sebastian met her at the airport, not because she needed assistance, because he wanted to be there. They walked side by side through the terminal. No rush. No pressure. Just two people who had built something honest together, outside. The city lights shimmered once again. Harper looked up at the skyline and felt something she had not felt in years. Not validation from others, not victory over someone, but ownership of herself. She had packed her bags quietly. The world saw her at dinner with a billionaire, but what truly changed everything was not who she sat beside. It was the moment she chose to stand on her own foundation.